Dr. Evans, lovely to see you this morning. Tell me about your Buy British campaign. This sounds like a thoroughly good idea that the GB News audience would be well behind.
Camilla, lovely to see you. And it's really simple. What we're simply asking for is that supermarkets online have a tab that's Buy British. At the moment, if you click onto any online supermarket, you could hit a Christmas button and have a collection of all Christmas stuff. Yet, we don't have that when it comes to buying British. Now, many of the farmers want to see that, and many of my constituents and across the country want to buy homegrown local produce. So my campaign is simply asking that supermarkets implement this as a way of quickly finding the food that's been grown, homegrown here in Britain.
And you've had some joy already with the campaign, because I think Morrisons are the first supermarket to sign up. So what have they agreed to do?
Yeah, it's been brilliant. So I wrote an open letter to all supermarkets with 121 MPs from across the House signing up to support it. The government backed it in September. We wrote off to all the supermarkets. The only one that's come back supportively is Morrisons. And they've said, yep, we love the idea. The new CEO said it's great. And they've implemented a Buy British tag. So if you go now to do your fruit and veg shop or your British meat shop, there's a tab there. You can hit that. There are 94 items and counting on there. So my simple question is, where next? Well, asking the other supermarkets, if Morrisons can do it, why can't you?
And has this come in a kind of post-Brexit environment where British farmers have been saying to you, because I know you're in a quite rural constituency there, that they need this extra boost? I mean, how did it come about in the first place, and what's the reaction of the farming community to it?
Camilla, you're spot on. So this came out from being out with my farmers, talking to them, saying, what can the government do? Is it more about subsidies? Is it about tax breaks? And a couple of them just stopped me and said, look, what we really need people to do is just buy British. If they bought British stuff, we can then have better food security, it's better for the environment, and it gives people better choice. So I went away and thought, well, what's the best way to do that? And then wrote the letter. It turns out the NFU have been campaigning for this since about 2016 and 2017. So I've just piggybacked on the work with them. And since that's been happening, we've had a petition with 27,000 people and counting sign up to say, look, this is a good idea. Why don't supermarkets do it more often?
I mean, how is the farming community after Brexit? We do hear sort of scare stories that farmers aren't happy, that they're worried about trade deals with other countries, not least the likes of New Zealand and America, with regard to undercutting us when it comes to importing meat. I mean, what's the general feeling among the farmers that you're speaking to in Bosworth?
Well, there's always concerns, but they're very keen to point out the quality, the standards for husbandry we have here, the standards for animal welfare is some of the best in the world. It's the quality we have. So there's a real opportunity there, actually, to be exporting our stuff across the world. So these trade deals really help. Yes, there is a risk that you could be undercut, but I think the British produce stands on its own 2 feet, which is why when I asked the farmers, they said buy British because it does all that for us. That helps our food security as well as the environment as well. And so I think it's a win-win-win. Now, it's not for everyone. Not everyone can afford that. But I'm not saying that. I'm simply arguing that people get choice.
While I have you, Dr. Evans, do you mind if I ask you a few sort of party and government-related questions? I'm intrigued to know, for instance, how you plan to vote on the Rwanda bill on Tuesday. There's lots of stories in the newspapers about potential rebellions on both left and right of the party. I just spoke to Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, who is sort of mulling it all over. Where do you stand on that legislation?
I thought you might ask me this question, Camilla. I will be supporting the government with their position. I simply take a pragmatic view at this. You've got on one side of the party, the left saying this has gone too far. On the other side, the right saying it hasn't gone far enough. And the government lawyers saying this is the right way to deal with it. Now, we're working through a process. To me, what happens if we don't get this in place as a deterrent? Labour don't have a policy, so nothing's going to change. And my constituents want to see illegal immigration stopped. This is our best chance of doing it. Now, I particularly note what Rwanda have said on this. Their foreign minister has turned around and said, but we will only support this in line with Britain following international law. So we've got to remember, if this doesn't go through, then there's going to be a great big hole and the whole scheme falls down. So for me, it's purely a pragmatic decision. I follow the likes of David Davis, who says, yeah, look, we want to make sure this gets sorted, and this is our best chance of ensuring that, because, God forbid, Labour don't have a plan to deliver it.
And when you speak to people on the doorstep, I would imagine that they do express concerns about the boats, but also about the legal migration figure, which hit a record high of 745,000 towards the end of 2022. But are they necessarily championing Rwanda as a plan? I mean, you're quite a level-headed Tory MP who may well have reacted to the idea of processing migrants overseas positively and then be told that we're going to do it ... in a Rwanda, and said to yourself, Rwanda, really? Is that the best place to do it?
Well, I think we already see the UN, according to the Daily Mail, sending people to Rwanda, refugees to be supported. I think the key thing is we've proved Denmark has legislation that allows for offshoring for people in third countries to be processed. It's a deterrent. We don't want people getting into that system in the first place. But I like to think if I was a political refugee, if it meant that I had to be processed in another country to be able to get where I wanted to be, I would go through that. But we want people to come through the legal routes. And I think, what's lost in these net migration figures legally is that actually one of the best exports we have is our university and our education system. The key thing is that people were bringing their families along and staying further than we wanted them to. That's a reasonable question. I want to export our university, our education across the world, but I also want to be able to have the services here provided to the public that meet the standards that they expect. And that's the balance we're looking at. It's the sheer numbers of people coming through. So we need to stop illegal migration and then deal with legal migration in a way that is still beneficial to the country, but also it allows us to export across the world as well.
Now, I note that you won the Patchwork Conservative MP of the Year for campaigning on body image following your work as a GP, where you saw, quotes, firsthand the negative impact that social media platforms and false advertising can have on a person's relationship with their body. You're also very good on social media. You're a TikTok user, notwithstanding the concerns about Chinese spying. And you are quite good, actually, to be fair to you, Dr. Evans, at sort of connecting with younger voters. Finally, do you think the Tories have got a problem with younger voters? Sometimes the idea of a young Conservative seems slightly oxymoronic.
Well, look, it's a great way. Each MP has to find a way in which they can connect. And I heard you talking before about Nigel Farage being out on a Celebrity and a chance to connect in a different way to a different audience. And that's what my job is here as an MP, to find ways to connect to people. For me, it's being on TikTok is the one thing I get stopped up and down the country for, to say you're the MP on TikTok. And you do it in a style that educates people to say what goes on behind the system, because a lot of people get fed up with the process and party political stuff. So understanding why decisions are made, and often both sides of the argument, I think is really important. And if I can play a part in doing that, that's what I did as a doctor, that's what I'm doing as a politician, I think it can really help. So I've found a niche. It's not for everyone. Not everyone goes into the jungle, but I think we've got to have horses for courses.
Dr. Luke Evans, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Good luck with your Buy British campaign.
Thank you.